On today's show, we're going to dig deeper into the most viewed movie on Disney Plus in 2022, Encanto. What made this movie so popular? Why did it connect with so many people? Who was the villain in Encanto? We'll ask all these questions and more on today's show. It's going to be a fun one, guys. And I have an illustrious panel of my fellow geeks, my fellow story geeks on this show. I'm just going to go in a clockwise direction, starting with OG55. How are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on Story Geeks today, Jay. It's going to be a blast talking Encanto. I love this movie.
Yeah, and you were kind of the originator of the Orange Grove 55 channel, and you've been incorporating all these different elements. The Story Geeks is the latest one. Where can people find you on social media if they want to tweet at you? Or
you can find me here on YouTube, Orange Grove 55. You can also find me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55. I keep it simple.
Yeah, that's easy. Go do it. Go follow him. Always very good insights on the parks. And we're going to love to hear what he has to say about Encanto today. And then a longtime friend of the Story Geek show. How many shows have you been on at this point, Josh?
2 dozen? 3 dozen?
At least. I've probably podcasted. I've probably podcasted with Josh more than anyone else besides Daryl, my former co-host.
That's maybe true.
Maybe true.
We know each other.
Josh Taylor from Modern Mouse. What are you up to, Josh? Where can people find you?
You can find me. My main thing going on right now is on YouTube. I make videos pretty much shorts like every other day or so, but like long form videos analyzing and discussing anything under Disney's umbrella as far as film and television is concerned. My last video actually was about Pixar and like how they tell the story of parenting, especially fatherhood, which is kind of rare considering Disney like kills off every parent that exists. And then my next video coming out is actually about the Muppets. I love Muppets. So it's the rise and fall of Rizzo the Rat that is coming up. Hopefully this weekend. We'll see what's going on. But you can follow me pretty much on any social at Modern Mouse Josh, or find Modern Mouse on YouTube.
Nice. Go follow him. Go ahead,
Josh. I am so intrigued by the rise and fall of Rizzo the Rat. Is that kind of done in like a Hollywood true story style, or?
What is the style that it's going to be? So the way that I usually host videos is usually me giving kind of a video essay, but also there are cut scenes within my videos. This video, I wouldn't say it's Hollywood, like it's not some kind of like behind the scenes type of Hollywood true story type of thing, but it will have interview segments within it, and it'll be discussing Rizzo as a character as well as the actual like behind the scenes drama at the Muppets. So it'll be both kind of the fake story and the actual real story, both simultaneously told at once.
That's awesome. The rise and fall. I guess that includes also Pizza Rizzo at Hollywood Studios.
I do mention it. Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the other voice you just heard goes along with that amazing face. Disney Family Man 23, George, Citrus Corner. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be on talking some stories with the geeks, hence the name, Story Geeks.
That's
but glad to be on. Unlike my brother, Mr. Orange Grove 55, I do not keep it simple. I'm all over the place. You can find me on YouTube at Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You could also find me on the new podcast called A Walk with Walt. And also, of course, my home base on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Excellent. Always good stuff about the Florida parks coming from George. Just fantastic stuff. And the whole OG 55 crew is amazing. So thank you guys for being a part of this. Now, this is a standard The Story Geek show. Our last show was not necessarily a standard show, but it was a really fun show. This one is a little bit more about digging deeper into the stories that we all love. Today's story is a Disney story. It's perfectly suited for the OG 55 channel. We are going to be talking about Encanto. And there's some compelling reasons to talk about Encanto, but we're going to try and dig deeper into Encanto to really fully understand what's going on in that film and how it impacted both us and the world at large. The first question I have is basically around the fact that 2022 was a pretty strange year for entertainment. In 2021, not that many people were going to theaters for most of the year. Really, no movies performed well in the theater in 2021 until Spider-Man No Way Home came out at the end of the year in December. It was a bad year for theaters. But then in 2022, theaters opened up a little bit more, but not a lot of movies got huge boosts from their theatrical releases. We saw some standouts. Top Gun Maverick, of course, Avatar: The Way of Water. Those are really, really big in 2022. But it was hit or miss in the theaters in 2022. But an interesting fact, and this is one of our friend of the show, Aaliyah, had posted had shared somebody's post talking about what were the most streamed movies in 2022. Well, guess what? Disney had 10 of the top 15 movies streamed in 2022, and Encanto was number one. Now, the Story Geeks have never done a show on Encanto. Josh Taylor's done a couple videos on Encanto, so he should be prepared. But it's really interesting to see that take off the way that it did. It just was huge. So I'm just going to go around the circle here, starting with you, OG. In your opinion, what made Encanto so attractive to so many viewers? What caused so many people to go watch this film?
I think there's a few things actually going on here with this movie. Number one, it was just a great story, and then I think everyone can kind of relate to the family messaging in this film. You don't necessarily have to be of Latin culture even to relate to the story being told there with that family. So I think that's a big part of it. The music was fantastic as well, and I think that was a huge draw for this film. And the character design. Some of the best animated films, you can just take a few elements of a character and you can immediately know what character that is. For example, if you were to see red hair and purple seashells, you know what I'm talking about, The Little Mermaid, right? Same thing kind of goes for Encanto with the big curly hair and the green glasses. It's very, very iconic. And I think that kind of visual I guess you would call it visual, like iconography, I think really, really matters. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. I think it was just a kind of this perfect storm of great character design, great music, a story that everyone can kind of relate to. And it's off to the races. It really is.
That's a really good point. See, when I hear red hair and pink shells, I think of Joshua Taylor, but maybe that's just me.
Listen, that's for the weekends only, okay?
This is why I like podcasting with Josh.
Friday and Saturday nights down at O'Hara's. Just check me out there.
There you go.
So Josh, what do you think? What made Encanto so attractive to the viewers who showed up? And a lot of them did.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking here, absolutely, it is easy to associate with the film. There are a lot of themes that a lot of people can pick up on. The other part of that, and something that I think historically, as the Disney film historian kind of person in my eyes, and also my favorite film Disney of all time is The Three Caballeros, because it's behind the scenes is absolutely fascinating, and it debuted in Mexico. Saludos Amigos, the film before it, debuted in Brazil, and both of those films did absolutely amazing for those cultures. Specifically, the character of Jose Carioca, who is from Brazil, has become an iconic character for that country. Decades later, that film came out in the 40s. 1940s, 80 years later, they still use that character, right? Disney's been smart in the past few years of Coco with Pixar being a big thing, this film as well, several other films that feel like they are part of a cultural thing. For this film, Colombia, And a lot of Colombian people gravitated towards this film, which made it big on a global scale. On a United States front, I think that it does really well because musicals, especially in animation, do well. Um, they just always have. They're much more memorable that way, and I think that it would be a disservice also not to say that by the end of 2022, Strange World, which did absolutely horrendous numbers
Right.
in theaters, was also in that top 10 on Disney Plus by the end of the year, and was number one of the week by the end, by January 1st, 2023. So there's something socioeconomical to talk about here, that comes to, even though these films do bad, Encanto did bad in theaters, but it resonated with people really well, to the point where I remember people online saying, when is Encanto going to get the Frozen treatment? When are we going to get 17 shows at the theme parks around Encanto like we did Frozen? When are we going to start to see Maribel? And, people were demanding these characters. And I think that it gravitates towards the cultural aspect of it, but I think it also gravitates towards, as soon as it hit Disney Plus, there was a socioeconomic idea that people weren't going to go to the theaters as a group of four, whether that's because of COVID, whether that's because of money, up for debate. But when people actually saw it on Disney Plus, people gravitated towards it. They gravitated towards the songs. They gravitated towards the themes of the films, and that resonated with people. Good film. I love it.
Yeah.
I should revisit
It's
it.
fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
it really should.
It's fantastic. And Jay, if I could just add one more thing before we go on to George, I think that also in general, Latin culture works really, really well in animation. The music is fantastic. Like Josh mentioned, Three Caballeros. The music in that movie is absolutely phenomenal, and how colorful, whether it's Three Caballeros, Saludos Amigos, Coco, Encanto, the colors, the music, it just works so beautifully in animation. And we've seen it over and over and over again. And Encanto is just really the latest example of that. So,
Absolutely. Great point. George, what do you think? Why were so many viewers just going to this movie over and over again?
Well, I'm gonna double piggyback on what these men have saying, if that's even a thing. I don't know.
But you might have to buy me dinner, George.
Yeah. but I digress. But anyway, but I think it's more so because one, it's an original story. It's something that people have never really seen before. The take on it with this magical house, and that also arcs back to family. When Disney does a great story about family and the real life struggles that can be incorporated with a fictitious world, but it arcs back to something that you can come off of watching this movie and say, I see myself in this character. I see myself in this situation. That is, to me, quintessential Disney. And even at the very beginning of Pixar's start of film, they connect with the audience, and Encanto is no exception to that. And when I first watched it, I thought in that moment, this is a true Disney animated feature film. And it's because of all those qualities that Encanto holds. Back what OG was saying, with great characters, great story, great music, it all combines. And then when you add in to what Josh was saying with the cultural background, sort of how when they did Moana, they did Raya and the Last Dragon, and even Dakota, when you have that format and it just blends well with everything. I think Encanto's only issue was the timing it was released. I think if it would have came out prior to COVID or like around this point of time, I feel that it would have gotten that phenomenal sensation that Frozen got. But unfortunately it didn't. And I think it's building up to get people to say, okay, I need to watch this film or rewatch this film again, because a theater to a certain degree can latch onto a person if it's a good enough story to have them pay the $30-$40 to take their family to sit in a theater. And unfortunately, Encanto didn't have that opportunity. So I feel that even with the streaming, it got a lot of recognition, but I think it didn't have that worldwide sensation because of the occurrences that happened in 2020.
Nice. Yeah, I think all of you guys are landing on a lot of points, and I'm just going to maybe even triple down on some of these points, because I think one of the things that's true is, can you imagine taking a whole family to a theater during the pandemic? I mean, like you're trying to make sure your kids aren't coughing on people, they're not running down. I mean, like it would have been hard for an animated film to do well during the pandemic to begin with. I'm not aware of any animated films that did all that well during the pandemic. But Trolls 2 might have done okay, and
I mean,
and
they're
maybe,
still not doing that well, to be honest.
Yeah.
exactly. They're still not doing well. And one of the things I think is really fascinating is that Encanto is the #1 watched movie. And think about it from a business model perspective. And when you think about the kind of content, it's not just about the theatrical release for Disney anymore, because time on platform is often what's measured for a lot of social media networks and a lot of streaming services. They want to keep people on the platform. They don't want you going like, I'm kind of tired of watching this, I'm going to go jump over to YouTube, or I'm going to go jump over to Netflix. And Encanto is basically killing it on time on platform because it's a long film. People are going to be watching it over and over again. And I think you guys hinted at this, but it's a simple business principle that's happening, I think, with Disney here, is that Turning Red and Luca were not known for their music, right? And they were a little bit more controversial. Now, Luca wasn't super controversial. Turning Red was had a little bit more controversy surrounding it. But if you're a parent and you're like, what am I going to turn on in the background while I'm trying to work from home while my kid's running around so I can get them to kind of stay quiet for a little bit? Encanto is going to be your yeah, well, sure, you're going to do that too. But I'm just saying, of those movies, if you're in comparison of those other films, you're going to choose Encanto because you like that music. That it's not like it's not like because Turning Red, the only music that I can remember is the boy band music, right? So you're not going to
it's good, Jay. It's good music.
Josh and I have differing opinions on the quality of Turning Red, and that's another podcast.
Next week on Story Geeks.
yeah. Josh and Jay throw down. No, actually, and I agree with you. Actually, that is actually good music. is pretty fun. It's really funny too. But I think that Encanto, it did what Moana did years earlier, and what Frozen did years earlier, is it went, parents go, this is the movie I want to play. I want in the background when I'm wandering around. If I hear a song coming from that TV, it's gonna be a song that I like, which is a good segue into my next question, because Lin-Manuel Miranda basically has this innate ability to connect with audiences through musical storytelling. And so I'm gonna start with you, Josh. We'll go clockwise again. What was your favorite song from Encanto? And did any of the songs have a particular resonance with you on a deeper level? Because these songs go pretty deep into the perspectives and so like George, you said you can see yourself in a lot of these characters, or maybe you said it, OG. You can see yourself in a lot of these characters, and if you can see yourself in these characters and the songs relate to the deeper way that they feel, that's something pretty meaningful. So what about you, Josh? Any of these songs resonate with you on a deeper level?
So I was one of the few people that saw this film in theaters. You can tally my $10 to that. But this was a film that I actually didn't watch, and I try not to. As somebody, another side gig I do is I do like film critic stuff, so I actually write reviews for movies. But like, I try not to watch a lot of stuff going into a film, and so I didn't know a lot going into Encanto. And I had just come out of like family stuff, especially a lot of difficulty with my grandmother. So, relatable. But I also felt like I was carrying a lot of heavy burden throughout the relationship with my whole family. So as soon as surface pressure started, I was like, this chills run through my body. Like I was just like, yeah. And of course, like the way that Lin-Manuel writes songs, they feel contemporary but also timeless, and in that it felt like it just resonated with me. And as time has gone on, and I'm not fluent in Spanish, so forgive me, but uh, Dos Orguitas, Two Butterflies is a song that I've also just come to absolutely love. Um, it is such a beautiful, powerful song in the moment that visually is shown on screen as well. Uh, as far as like the true history of Colombia and their revolution and everything like that. Um, so it's just a really powerful soundtrack. Service Pressure works for me a lot, but like this whole soundtrack does. It really, and I think one of the things that Lin-Manuel does is the same thing that like Howard Ashman did when he wrote lyrics, right? Like he understood exactly what it takes for the audience to connect with characters. And so when he's writing songs specifically written for a character to sing, he understands that it is not only a song that is deeply emotionally impactful, but is continuously driving the story forward. Like there's not a song within this film that doesn't feel like it's not necessary to tell somebody's story. And I think that that's why he does so well. That's why he's done well on Broadway. That's why he's doing well with Moana, with Encanto, with I think he's doing like the Peter and Wendy film or whatever. I don't know, but like I think that he is our Howard Ashman from the 80s, 90s. He's that person today.
Which is sorely needed because there was a big gap where there was not a Howard Ashman
Listen,
necessarily.
Phil Collins filled that gap all right. I enjoy those songs a lot, but I don't think that they have the emotional impact that like Howard Ashman or Lin-Manuel brings to the table.
If you only had put more drum solos in, then it'd been,
You know,
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut. George, what about you? Any of these songs from this film that resonate with you?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's the same that Josh picked, and I'm so glad that he picked it because so that way I don't have to butcher trying to say it because that's I can't pronounce half of these songs. But
so Two Butterflies.
Two Butterflies. There you go. Yeah, there we go. So, not that I really have a full-on connection with this song in particular. I just love how it is presented in the film, and to just look upon how it could touch somebody. In that moment, that if they're going through a struggle with family, with their own personal life, you know, it's I can resonate with it because I can feel for that person in particular when they are going through that. And that's a strong song within the message itself. And on top of just the song, I am a fan of not just with the lyrics, but with the music in general. Encanto's score is some of the most, I mean, if you just kind of like if you could mute the lyrics and just listen just to the score itself, it is one of the most upbeat, but yet powerful, resonated storytelling just within the music, you know, and it carries the story along. And again, back to what I was saying, that is like the true quintessential Disney animated film, that just how Josh had mentioned about Howard Ashman, the music carries along the story. And Howard was very big on that, to where you could watch Beauty and the Beast and it was an animated film, but it looked like as if you could be sitting in a theater watching a live Broadway production. That is how these people, along with Lin-Manuel Miranda, because he's from Broadway, he knows it, he gets it. So to incorporate that onto a film, but not just a regular, like a live action film, but an animated film, that's an incredible feat to accomplish. And I do agree. I feel that Lin-Manuel Miranda does have that quality. Me personally, maybe not as strong as Howard Ashman. I don't think anyone can touch what he has done with the Renaissance era, but he is definitely in that category.
That's really cool. Yeah. So for me, several songs resonate. I'm going to bring up Dos Oruguitas in the next question because I actually think it serves a very powerful purpose in the actual film. So we'll talk about that one. I'll talk about that one in a minute because it is a gorgeous song. And even if you just hear it sung live by a performer and you don't have the emotional context of the film, it's still like you will still have tears in your eyes because you're like, this is just a big, gorgeous song, right? Like, it hits the way that the first few sequences of Up hits, right? Like you get that same feeling while you're listening to that song. I do think that we don't talk about Bruno just to mention it because it's not the song I'm going to pick. Yeah, we don't talk about it. I do think that song is brilliantly arranged. When they start circling the table and each one of them has a little minor part to sing, quintessential Lin-Manuel, by the way, because he loves doing that kind of thing where characters enter in and out of sequences. But the song that really hit me really hard is, and this goes all the way back to the same comment that came up earlier about how this film gets families so well. It knows what the different roles are in the family. It sees Mirabel as somebody who's kind of ostracized by the family, the black sheep of the family, if you will, right? But it also sees I can't remember her older sister's name though. What's the strong one's name?
Oh, let me see. It
Isabella
is Louisa Madrigal.
Louisa.
Yes,
Louisa. So when Louisa starts singing that song about surface pressure, there is a member of every family that fits that role. And it's not necessarily like Josh brought it up. It's not necessarily like there's a metaphor that her strength is physical strength and will get everybody through it because she's physically strong. And yet she's like emotionally like. But I think that same metaphor applies to emotions. Like I remember when my mom passed away in 2012. So this is a while back. I all of a sudden, because my mom's personality is like my personality, right? Like we were not super emotional on the surface. We don't emote to other people. My dad's like super emotional. He's like, he is like a crier. He wants to be kind of nurturing and things like that. And I remember after my mom passed away, I would get these calls from my dad and all of a sudden had an insane appreciation of what my mom did for my dad, right? Like the two of them together made something even more special because no one human is complete. And that's why families are so important and friendships that function as family are so important because no one human is complete. Now, probably no group of humans is complete either, but we at least are able to build upon one another. And as soon as I started getting those calls from my dad, I realized that one of my roles in my family is being seen as the one that's responsible, and I don't have to worry about Jay, right? And so that surface pressure song expresses something that is incredibly deep and ingrained in people like me, who the family looks at us and goes, "Oh, he's got it all together." And all you want to do is be like, "But I don't always, guys. Guys, I don't always have it together." And I think that song, I even purchased it. And by the way, it does not come off as well when you purchase it as when you see it in the film. For whatever reason, it just doesn't. It's not quite there. But it is a fantastic song. The words are phenomenal. And I really appreciated that Lin-Manuel and his team of writers could understand that was a role in families and understood how it was portrayed in the family. And those two things are really difficult to do because all you're at the end of the day you're trying to do is make a song that people want to listen to and want to watch in a film. But they went the extra mile to say, but what if it was meaningful to people as well? And I think that's just phenomenal. So what about you, OG? What song resonates with you?
Two of them actually, and they're, I don't know. One of them is We Don't Talk About Bruno. I actually really, really like that song. It's got the fun factor to it, and every time they play that song at the parks or you hear it on, on the radio or whatever, you want to sing along. It's really one of those. It's almost like It's a Small World, right? You just can't help it. It's one of those like catchy tunes. So I just love that. And there's no really, for me with that song, there's no real deep messaging or anything like that. I just have a lot of fun with that song, which is surprising too, because that song is, I think, out of all the music in the film, is sort of the least relatable. Cause like if you were to listen to that song, I guess, without seeing the movie, it wouldn't really mean much. You kind of have to watch the movie to understand what the song is even about. So it doesn't really have much, like, I don't think it really resonates too much with people, but it's just such a catchy tune, and it's got that fun, that surface kind of fun element to it, which is, I think that's the secret to its success, really. And then my other one is the Two Butterflies. I think that's a gorgeous song. I absolutely love that song.
Can I just say, I just want to say really quick, I think the thing about We Don't Talk About Bruno, what works about it is that it is inherently a Broadway or like musical-esque song. It doesn't work in any other context, right? Like you don't get like a lot of like rock music or like any contemporary kind of like radio music where you've got an ensemble cast where all of a sudden John Leguizamo has only 2 lines and then he backs away. You know, like you don't have that kind of thing. Like it is inherently a Broadway musical-esque experience, and in that way I think it makes it so unique, and I think that's why it is fun, is because it's like there's no other context in which I could hear this. I can listen to the soundtrack, but when I listen to the soundtrack, it is inherently a Broadway tune or a film tune because it's a musical. So I think that's what makes it unique for people, and I think that's why people like it. Plus, the theme parks, if you've been to any of the theme parks, have been using it, especially at Disneyland. The way they use it in the sense that they actually like put projections up on It's a Small World is super fun, and I've really enjoyed that, and I hope it never goes away. I know it will someday, but I will be sad that day.
That is fun. I love that projection stuff with Encanto. It's just great. And this film really, and this is the other thing, Jay, that you were talking about, how like Disney doesn't really depend on just like box office. I mean, look how many times Disney dips into this, right? Like, okay, it got its box office. Now it's doing like bonkers, crazy good on Disney Plus, but then it's also at the parks. So they're selling merch. Yeah. So it's like it's across the board. All sectors are selling Encanto, and from what I understand, that the toys are selling really well. The Encanto toys.
Interesting.
Like really, really well. So
I do know, like in our local stores, the dolls, the Encanto dolls are like the hot ticket out here at least.
Wow. I don't have kids, so I have no context to what's selling for toys. The only time I hear people buying toys is when I listen to the John Campea show, and Robert Meyer Briggs is talking about buying all of the toys that he buys.
I buy toys, bro. Look at this whole wall back here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You do have a lot of toys.
And I love his neon sign. That's great, man.
Oh, dude. The neon sign is amazing.
Bro, you got to get one. You got to get one that says, "I'm Jay and I suck."
No, that one's not the one I'm gonna get, but I might put that in. I might put that just right outside your window when you're trying to sleep. It just flash.
It's just your face looking at me. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next question I have, George, this is going to be you first, because this is a really, really interesting question. There is one way in which Encanto completely obliterates the normal Disney storytelling formula, and that is that the villain is not necessarily obvious. Like normally Disney films, the villain's obvious. There's Scar, right? There's Ursula. The villain's obvious, and not only is the villain obvious, the villain is obvious from multiple perspectives. They're uglier than all the other characters. They are inherently evil the way they talk. Their voice register is several octaves lower than anyone else's voice register. So this is a tough one, George. Is there a villain in Encanto? And if there is, who is the villain in Encanto?
Okay, so let me see how I could best describe this. Me personally, I think it goes by each person's perspective of how a viewpoint is on a character. For instance, if you were to look at Mirabelle's grandmother, one can relate to say, oh, she's the villain. She is, she doesn't respect Mirabelle. She doesn't treat her the same. She casted off Bruno, so obviously she's going to be the villain. And everybody is waiting for that turning point in the film where she's going to reveal her true colors, so to speak, as the main typical villain of how we always see them, especially in a Disney animated film. But that never happened. You get to see the backstory of the grandmother, of how her pain and hurt came and carried with her, and how she wanted to have that protection of her family because of what happened in her past. And then that's where it becomes relatable. And then a person could sit back and say, oh, I understand that because I know that kind of person in my family, or I am that person in the family. So she can't be the villain because that would make me a villain. So I think so in my personal opinion, I don't really think there is a set tone villain in this film. I think it just goes by each person's individual outlook of how they see a particular character.
Interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, for me, I think you brought up the grandmother, and I think there's something you can do with storytelling that is really fascinating to me as a storyteller, as a writer. And that thing is that you can, if you showcase how someone got to be where they are, you oftentimes see the person in a different light, right? It's very easy for us to see, like, pick your villain, right? That the world has told you is a villain, like, whether it's, Donald Trump or January 6th rioters or Nancy Pelosi, or like the world, there's a bunch of people who have been made into villains or have been made into heroes. By the way, those same people turned into heroes by a different group of people, right? It's very easy to say, look, if I reveal the villain's backstory into how they became a villain, I now sympathize with them because I went through some of the same things myself, or I had some of the same situations, or I could see myself in that situation doing the same things. And then you realize, like, okay, well, then maybe that person's not really a villain. And we've seen that done in Marvel. We've seen it done in Disney. We've seen it done all over the place. I think it's a really powerful storytelling technique, and I really like it. But I also think that heroes and villains are not defined by how we feel about them. They're defined by how selfish they inherently are, or how selfless they inherently are. And in my opinion, what we see a villain, because I firmly believe that the grandmother, Abuelita, I guess they call her, Abuela, they call her, she is the villain for sure. She has become the villain because of generational trauma. And that generational trauma is now being, her generational trauma is now being placed upon the generations below her. And I think it's a powerful message because I think what it's indicating to us is that we are all heroes and villains encompassed in the same person. We are not, I don't look at OG and go, OG, you're a hero, brother. Like, nothing but a hero. I am positive that if I'm around OG long enough and he has a bad day, I'm going to go, wow, OG, you're really acting like a villain today, right? And the same goes for every single human being that I've ever met in my life. So I like the storytelling here because, and when I mentioned earlier, like, I wanted to talk about Dos Oruguitas, again, this is the reason why Dos Oruguitas gives us the ability to go, oh, she was acting like a villain, because everybody's trauma is based on her perspective of them. But Dos Oruguitas allows us to understand what her trauma was that made her so concerned about keeping this house intact. And to me, I think it doesn't excuse her from not being a villain. She's still a villain. But what we get to see is we get to see ourselves in her and go, oh, she does need forgiveness. In order to rebuild this house and have her be a big part of it, we need to come together, as opposed to kicking Scar out of the pride, right? Like, we need to make sure that this is maintained. So I do label her as the villain, but I think that they did a fantastic job in turning her in the end to make it be like, okay, we understand why, and then she's able to come out of that place. So,
of what you just described, I title that as what I like to call it, the Darth Vader syndrome.
Yeah,
that's what I kind of title it as, because it's like you have a person who is deep within themselves. They have this pain, this dark background, this structure, and anything can set off at any given time. But in the very beginning of like when we watch A New Hope, you know, you automatically see Vader as Vader. Oh, he is the villain. Boom. He's the bad guy. But then as we get into the prequels, from the Phantom Menace to the Attack of the Clones, to Revenge of the Sith, that is the pinnacle point of Anakin's story transforming into Vader, of why he's there in the first place when we get into A New Hope. So of what you just described, I call that the Darth Vader syndrome.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna go into my doctor and ask him if I have that syndrome. Can you test me for Vader syndrome? I think I have that. OG, what do you think? Who is the villain? Is there a villain in Encanto at all? And if so, like what evidence do you see?
Yeah, I actually, it's interesting. I actually don't think there's a villain in the sense of a physical person. I think the villain is really just a family's lack of communication. That's the villain, or the villain is really just that family pressure. You know, this family, they love each other, but there's this pressure, this generational pressure and stressors that are being placed on them, that's causing them to sort of hey, look, we all go through that with family, right? We all go through that where we all love each other as a family, but we kind of sometimes can't see the trees through the forest, so to speak, right? We all get wrapped up in like money or a good job or what have you, and maybe because of these kind of distractions, we don't treat each other that great, right? But at the end of the day, we're a unit and we care about each other. I think that's what's kind of happening here in Encanto, is that it's sort of this family generational pressure. We talked about it with the abuela and how she's kind of bringing that baggage in. I think that's the villain, and it's not a physical person. It's more of an idea. That's really the bad guy in this story, so to speak. And it's very, very relatable. I mean, whether you're of Latin descent or any family can relate to this in some way, I think. So yeah, that's my opinion. I think that's the villain of this story.
I do think one of the things that makes this film so relatable is the fact that during the pandemic, we only saw our family members online. A lot of us did. And when you only see somebody online, you only see pieces of them. You don't see a full individual. You don't see all of the things that they're doing that are really positive. And this story is about a family that, like what you just said, OG, doesn't see itself the right way. This doesn't communicate with itself the right way. So I think one of the reasons it makes so much sense that this is at the top of the list of things to watch is it's about a family that started to crumble literally and then built itself back up into a functioning unit, right, which I think is pretty powerful stuff. Josh, what do you think? Sorry, you go for it.
Real quick, I just want to say, to kind of circle back to We Don't Talk About Bruto, that song sort of encompasses the whole lack of communication thing, right? We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to brush it under the rug. We're not going to talk about it, and that leads to problems sometimes. So anyway.
Yeah, and maybe I'm giving the grandmother too much grief, but like I felt like she's the one that pushed Bruno out of the family too, right? So I'm solidly view her behavior as like pretty toxic to that family's ability to stay together. But again, we see her trauma, so we understand why. So Josh, what do you think? Which of the three of us is on the right track?
Okay, so before I answer that, I want to give like a bit of Josh Taylor Modern Mouse historical ideas here. So one of the things that like I'm known for, right? My most viewed videos on YouTube have usually been about Disney's film eras, and each era kind of is defined by different things. I would actually say that starting with Moana, going forward, for the most part, not every film, but for the most part, Disney has done something unique. And I think this comes off the back of John Lasseter, love him or hate him for whatever he's done. He brought that Pixar idea into Disney. You could see the similarities in the animation styles as they adapted that. But one of the things about Pixar early on that I absolutely loved is that there were no true villains, right? Like when you pick up a story like Aladdin or The Little Mermaid, you meet the villain when they're already in their villain phase. You don't get to really understand where they came from and why they became that person.
Mhm.
One of the things from Moana onwards, including Encanto, is that the things that are shown and what is really the villain is circumstance and how we decide to proceed in those circumstances. The idea around Two Butterflies, that song, right, is that Abuela sees what's happening with the Civil War. She kind of goes into hiding, takes her family with her, and she's so overtly protective that nothing else matters. But like, we need these magical powers in order to protect our people, in order to protect the family. She is a victim of circumstance. I would never say that she is a villain. I would never say that anyone in any of these stories from Moana onward, again, for the most part, are villains. I would say that they're all victims of circumstance. It just depends on how they choose to attack that circumstance and how they decide to relate to the people around them, their family members, whatever the case might be. And so I think that that's the switch with storytelling that I think is interesting at the Disney company right now, is that they've put heroes and villains as an idea to the side, and instead like, let's focus on these complex issues that maybe we can all relate to, in a sense of what is an event that can happen in our lives and how do we deal with it. And in a sense, yes, maybe you could see Mirabelle or Moana or whomever as heroic because they are the protagonist and they evolve over the story. That's just storytelling 101. But you're also saying, when you look at villains, or when you say like, go back to old school storytelling, right? You say like, here's the hero versus whatever, hero versus something. Usually it's hero versus, like, in traditional Disney storytelling, it is hero versus villain. And in this, I feel like it is hero versus nature or hero versus circumstance or whatever the case might be. I don't see a definitive human or character driven villain in these types of stories.
It's interesting, Josh. That's a great perspective, and it's a much more, this new approach by Disney that you're talking about is a much more realistic one too, right? Because like in the real world, we don't have. I mean, like what you talked about, like, perception and victims of circumstance. No one is really 100% evil or like this one-dimensional villain like you see in a lot of the old school Disney movies. In the real world, people, and Jay, you touched upon this. In the real world, people have multiple angles, right? Multiple faces. I mean, a terrible person could be really great one day to somebody and treat them really well. You're right. And that's how the real world works. And Disney's sort of taking that approach now, where they're like, there's a little more gray area. It's not so black and white. It's not Ariel and Ursula anymore. There's that gray area. So it's fascinating.
And that kind of even goes back to even some of Disney's prior to Moana. If you look at the live action Maleficent with Angelina Jolie, it tells the backstory of Maleficent, the true quintessential mistress of all evil. And yet you get the different side where it may not actually be the true story of how Maleficent was supposed to be, but it's through her eyes, through her point of view, where you can kind of see, okay, how did she become this evil, malevolent figure that we all know in the traditional Sleeping Beauty concept? And I'll even go even further back to Beauty and the Beast, not with Gaston. We all know that, he has the exterior of this prince, but a heart of a pig, and we always say, he becomes the villain as the story progresses. He starts out as a jerk and he moves on to a killer, not because that he feels that the Beast is a villain, but it's because the Beast is someone who is in his way of getting what he wants. But aside from Gaston, if you actually look at the Beast in general, there were some talks about it at the studio during the production of Beauty and the Beast where they didn't know which way to take the Beast. Is he hero, villain, victor, victim? And they actually titled him as all of these things. And the Beast has that persona where he is both hero and villain because of what you touched upon, Jay, where somebody can, start out as being quote unquote evil and becoming a good person, or somebody good can end up becoming evil in the sense because of what then Josh mentioned about the circumstances in life. Hence the Darth Vader syndrome. I thank you.
Yeah, it's a topic that I actually care quite a bit about because I don't feel like society currently has a good language around labeling people. We love to label people. We're very tribal. We're as tribal as I've ever seen us be, right?
Yeah.
And
we're as tribal as the Na'vi.
exactly right. And we don't have a good language around what we mean. So one of the things we did with the Story Geeks was I was like, you know what? We're going to come up with a definition of what a hero and a villain is that basically is like you can apply it to any character and get the same answer. You don't have to try and figure it out. Is Thanos a villain or is he not a villain? Is Killmonger a villain or is he not a villain? Mm-hmm. The quintessential question about heroes and villains is, are they acting for the benefit of other people, even those that are not a part of their tribe, or are they benefiting only themselves and their tribe? And I think that when you apply that language, what you have to come away with is you have to come away with this new perspective that Disney, I think, is trying to show us. This is why I'm calling this out as a really good thing, where it is nobody is 100% either or, like we've already said a million times, right? I don't think anybody's 100% a dick, which is one of the greatest lines from Guardians. But the language is now, we're not creating heroes and villains. Everybody wants you to, right? We want to create a hero. We want to create a villain. We're actually just dealing with people. And are these people behaving right now in a selfish way or an unselfish way? That doesn't mean, it may mean that they're leaning towards being a villain or leaning towards being a hero, but they're not really either, because you can't be one or the other in your circumstance. Take the person who's seen as one of the best people of all time. I mean, MLK Jr. is the example I like to use because he is a quintessential leader. He has led so many people towards amazing goals, transformed civil rights in the United States of America, and yet was cheating on his spouse. So, I mean, like there, you have to take everything that you hear with a grain of salt, because no person is perfect. And if you view them in one light, you will view them as a villain. If you view them in another light, you will view them as a hero. So sometimes it's better just to watch a movie like this and go, yeah, I'm really glad that people can move forward and move out of their selfish behavior into selfless behavior. But this brings me to question number 4. We got 5 questions. We got 2 more questions left. Question number 4. I guess I have to start with me. I'll just go quick. I'll go quickly on this because I want to see where you guys landed on this. I want to know what you all think of the ending of the film, and does the film come to a satisfying conclusion to you? Why or why not? And I'll answer just very quickly, and I'll move on to you guys. I'm a little conflicted with the ending, and I think it depends on how you interpret the ending, as in the fantasy part of the story bugs me a little bit, because they set up Mirabelle as a person who does not have powers and yet is the thing that brings the family back together. It means Mirabelle's actions that really do that, because Bruno was ostracized until she was able to bring him back into the fold. My only concern is at the end of the film, I still kind of feel like when the house and the family gets their powers back, it takes away from the message that it has been giving us that whole time, which is you don't need to have powers. You are good enough as you are. Come to the table with the way you feel. So the one part about the ending that I'm not, now you could make an argument that the house has the power and that the people have realized that they can just use their gifts. I think that's a good interpretation. But I kind of wish that it ended with everyone having lost their powers, but then coming back together. So, OG, what do you think?
I'm sorry. Before you go to OG, actually, if I could actually just chime in,
please,
based off of that. I actually had the opposite thinking of you, because to the ending, because when they all got their powers back, but Mirabelle is then the person who didn't get any powers, that's what made her stand out as a individual, that despite of everybody else around you that may have something that you don't, you have your own special qualities about you that in the end, yeah, they all have their powers, but you also have a power that you brought them back together for them to allow to adapt to have their powers back. So that's where, and I'm glad you actually went first, because that was my sense of that. I felt that I was a little bit more satisfied with the ending, but to the opposite of what you were saying. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. That's good. OG, what do you think?
And that's actually my George. I'm right with you, brother. Like on that. That's how I feel about it. I feel that like her power isn't, her power is how she brought everyone together. That's her power, and I thought that was in my opinion, I thought that was a really powerful message. She doesn't need the magical powers to be special. She's special in the way that she's able to bring the family together and her character and what have you. And I thought that was really, really, really special. I really dug that messaging there with that whole situation. So yeah, I was actually really happy with the ending on it and how that kind of came about. I was kind of actually worried that they were gonna give her powers or something at the end.
Yes, because honestly, I didn't want to see that typical notion of, okay, now because she did something heroic and selfless, so the house grants her powers. That's just it's too typical. So I'm actually glad. Yeah.
Okay, Josh, what do you think? Whose side are you on here?
Well, keep in mind, this is a film animated mostly for children. So it would be a super huge bummer if they ended the whole film like at the river, where she's just like, I understand you now, Grandma, and then it's like, boom, cut to the end, and just like, oh, that's I mean, Oscar worthy, but like, let's be honest, like, this is not The Whale. So I kind of agree with these fellas and not with you, Jay, like always. But one of the things that I think that you have to make, well, first of all, the story tells, like OG said initially a long time ago at the beginning of this show, this is a very colorful film.
Yeah. And
one of the things it tells is a story in colors. Almost every character in this film, Isabella is colored mostly in pinks, purples, right? Bruno in greens. And many of the other family members are singular colors or maybe two colors at max. Mirabelle, our protagonist, is full of different colors because she's representative of the whole family.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That is the point in which the film, as a storytelling aspect, is trying to tell you through animation. Abuela is, as a similar person, non-magical. She is very concerned about the inner core of the family, not the village outside of it. She'll gladly help the village outside of it, but she's more concerned with what's going on within. The idea that by the end of the film you progress with is that Mirabelle is going to eventually take over Abuela's spot within the family. She is the one non-magical person. She is the Nick Fury to these adventures, right?
I like that.
But her idea is, I want to not just take care of this family, and I don't want to ostracize anybody within this family, despite what their powers or non-powers may be. But I do want to look out in the world. I want to look out past our walls within this home that we've built, because I want to help those people as well. And I think that's a message adults will take away from this, more or less. I think kids will definitely pick up on certain themes. They're not going to pick up on the idea that, like, she is full of colors while all the other characters not, so she's representative of all of them. That is much more hey, have you been to a college course about film recently? But like, I think that's where you go. So I think that when you talk about the ending is unsatisfactory, I think it just depends on what you're interested in looking for. But I also think that on a surface level, it's fine. It ends on a nice musical number, which is a Disney trait. It ends, with the family being happy ending, children's story, animated musical, whatever. But I think it's real benefit, especially on an adult level, from a film analysis level, is that it progresses the story forward in a satisfying way. And it shows you that not only the written word on the script, which I know that you are very familiar with, Jay, but the actual elements within the animated style also reflect that script. And so, as well as the music and everything else. And so I think that that's what makes it so satisfying as an adult, is because you get to see all of those elements combined together, feeling like it's progressing to a very happy ending by the end.
Yeah. And I think to be a little bit clearer, I actually don't feel like the ending is unsatisfactory. I think that the ending is because again, when I view these things, I'm not viewing them as like just how did I feel when I walked out of the theater. I'm literally viewing these things as like, let me analyze that a little bit deeper about how they told the story and what the story is and what conclusion the story comes to. And that's because I care about the stories of things, right? Like and this is where it to be a little bit more clear, it's a satisfactory ending from a movie, from a story standpoint. It's an unsatisfactory ending for me when I want to extract deeper meaning from it. And here's why. Because one, the townspeople don't have powers. And so now it feels like this family still needs to be special, and we're still looking at the family on the hill, and we hope that they will be benevolent towards us and use their gifts for us. And I feel strange about that, for one. For two, the other thing that I think that is interesting about it is to me, it doesn't close the loop on some of the things that they've built up in the subplots. So, for example, Louisa said, I feel too under pressure to be the person who's strong. And yet, at the end of the film, she's the person we got to turn to carry stuff. So that to me is like one of those things where I go, okay, so for me would have been ideal. Now, I'm not saying that it should have ended this way, because to Josh's point, this is fantastical. It's full of color. It's full of life. From that standpoint, it is highly satisfactory. But what would have been really satisfactory to me would have been for the family to say, hey, look, we don't have powers anymore. None of us have powers anymore, but we can still do the things that we used to do. And let's bring more of the village into this equation and do more things together. And then that would have landed for me. Like, well, they do it, but they still have the powers. Like you said it, they're the Avengers, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a little uncomfortable with, because it was set up that Mirabelle felt so bad about not having powers. Yes, by the end of it, we say, well, she feels good that she doesn't have powers. Okay, fine. Wouldn't it even be better, though, if everybody learned the lesson of you don't need powers, you don't have to have powers to feel like you're a valuable member of society, right? That, to me, would have been a deeper, more meaningful conclusion to that.
And you're right. And I think that was Disney's approach on it, but they wanted that to be the main focus just for Mirabelle. They wanted the main character to have that moment that she didn't have the spotlight. So at the end, she finally got that recognition, because if they would have taken all the powers away, then it would have been everybody is on that same playing field, where with them getting their powers back, they get to a certain level, but then Mirabelle is on an even higher level for not having the powers.
Absolutely.
But then, of course, of talking about the Avengers, that if they made the grandma have an eye patch and a black leather jacket, that would have been badass.
I think that the film does try to showcase that under Abuela's leadership, it is family first and then village second.
Mm-hmm.
But I think under Mirabelle's leadership, everyone is chipping in. It is very much a socialist idea, right? Like the village is to be just as helpful to the family as the family is helpful to them, and in that way, it is alleviating some of the stresses that some of these characters seem to have the burden of. And so there is more of, I think that by the end of the film, there's a more even playing field for these characters. So I think that their stresses are alleviated to a certain sense. Again, going back to the Marvel thing, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And that is something that I think these characters will still always have. But I don't think that Louisa is going to spend 40 hours, 60 hours a week lifting around goats anymore. I think that some other people in the town are going to be interested in hanging out with the goats and helping her. So
yeah, and I won't keep pushing this, but you just proved, in my opinion, you just proved why it should have ended the way I said. Because then it really would have been, we are a commune of people and we all are of equal value. Now
Right.
you're saying, well, no, we see the family that way, but they also have powers, and so they actually technically are better. And I just can't get behind that. But you guys don't have to convince me. I'm glad we all have different perspectives, and I don't want to bring anybody else's high down. By the way, this is just me like trying to analyze the story and think like, what is it not? Why does that not click for me personally? And that's what my personal reason was. But
I mean, it could have been even to the fact that Disney kind of wanted to leave like that as an opening, to how would an audience person take away from that film? Like, how would they want to see the ending? And maybe that's how Disney kind of left it on that note where we didn't really get a full, clear decision of, are they using their powers the way that they did, or are they using it in a different format? So maybe that was Disney's way of saying, even though it is a children's, animated film, but maybe for the adult standpoint, that they can look at it of how we're discussing it right now to say, oh, maybe this is how it ends without them actually physically showing it.
Right. Well, I think your point.
Sorry, I already know your fifth question, and I think that does lead into the fifth question to a certain extent.
It does. Yeah.
Behind the scenes, sorry to spoil anybody's, but like we already know the questions. I think that does help lead into the kind of fifth question that you will get to, and I think that I have an answer for that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think one of the things that George said earlier is very true about this particular story, and it is Mirabel's story. Yes, it is about the family, but it is Mirabel's story. So the reason it's satisfactory is because Mirabel's ending is satisfactory, and that's what makes the story powerful at that point. So yeah, question number 5, good segue. So it used to be that Disney didn't do sequels, and then it used to be that Pixar didn't do sequels, and now both those studios just love sequels because they love profit, and they go make sequels because they know we're going to show up. It's worked out really well for them. They make a lot of money off their sequels. So when it comes to Encanto, my question is this, and we're going to start all the way from the beginning again. So OG, you're first on this one. Do you want a sequel? Do you want a park attraction? Do you think Disney should move on? Do you want all of the above? Like, where do you think that Disney should take Encanto as a property?
Okay, so I am very much a traditionalist when it comes to the idea of sequels to Disney feature animated films, right? Like I'm not typically on board with that. I'm just not. I think a lot of these stories, it's a one and done, and they kind of leave it at that. Now I'm not like totally rigid on it. Like, there are certain stories that, you can maybe get away with a sequel or something, right? But for the most part, I think these films should kind of be standalone. And I think Encanto is definitely one of them. I think Encanto worked beautifully as a standalone film. I think a sequel is really, really unnecessary. But do I want to see more Encanto? Absolutely. And I definitely want to see Encanto in the parks. And it touches upon my point from earlier about Latin culture with the beautiful music and the colors and the energy. I think that would translate as beautifully as it does in the film. I think that would translate just as beautiful in a theme park environment. I would love to see a really, really immersive dark ride. Similar to that of Hong Kong Disneyland's Mystic Manor. I'm going to play a little bit of it for people at home that aren't familiar with this. But basically, where I'm going at with this is that the magical house could be the show building. You enter the Madrigal home, and you travel through it, and all this magic is happening around you. And this is kind of an idea. This is from Hong Kong, but it's kind of an idea of maybe what we can see in an Encanto dark ride.
Bro, straight armchair Imagineer this entire segment.
Yes. Yeah. Here we go. So this is a great attraction, trackless, and you go through this Mystic Manor, and there's all this magic occurring. You can see the effects are really, really dope. But imagine an Encanto attraction like this, where the house is doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You're going through it. I think this would be an incredible attraction. It would do the movie justice. I'd love to see it like maybe in California Adventure. California Adventure has ties to obviously Latin culture because of California, and I think it would really work beautifully there. But something like this, oh man, this is where I would go with it, in my opinion.
That ride looks epic. I would have
It-
loved to have, been able to ride that ride sometime. Maybe someday.
yeah,
What's the other one? The Pirates of the Caribbean. I think it's the one in. I don't know if it's the one in Shanghai or the one in Hong Kong, but the
Shanghai.
Pirates of the Caribbean
Shanghai.
is it Shanghai? That
Yeah.
looks ridiculous too. Holy cow!
it's crazy.
Amazing.
It's crazy. So yeah, I think
You-
Encanto has a lot of potential for the park stuff. If it gets the proper budget and they really do it right, I think it could be a really, really awesome thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. That's OG's opinion. Josh, what do you got?
Again, like always, I have a super long backstory to all of this. So, looking at the socioeconomic situation that the world is in right now, and what we're looking at going out of the pandemic, whether you think it's medical or I would actually state it's more economic. That more than medical anyway. But I would say that going forward, people out of the pandemic learned I'm kind of okay with watching stuff on my TV, right? Especially when it comes to a family of 4 going to the movie theaters. Like me by myself, totally cool going to the movie theater to see like Infinity Pool or whatever. For a family of 4, much more expensive outing. And so I think that we're going to see a trend moving forward that family films, children's films are most likely not going to have the Frozen type of, box office success. We're going to see most kind of family animated types of films either go straight to the platforms, streaming platforms, or do okay in theaters before going straight to streaming. Because of that, I think that it will actually change how Disney and other animation studios address the films that they make. They'll be starting to make films that they see as potential things they can develop into shorts and television series and attractions for the theme parks and merchandising opportunities. One of the things about Strange World that does not work on the same level as Encanto, even though it's doing well streaming now, is that it doesn't have that music. It doesn't have the colors. It doesn't have the connection emotionally that a lot of people have in Encanto. Because of that, I think that we will start to see over the next decade more of a swerve towards that way. But I do think that that means more sequels, if or in some fashion. It maybe not a film sequel, but we'll see like Zootopia, where we get a 6 to 8 episode short form thing on a streaming service, right? We'll start to see more incorporation into the theme parks from various things. And so I think that there's going to be, that magical synergy word that all of the suits like to throw around. And they'll think about that as they're developing new properties. And I think that Encanto moving forward will probably be one of those things. I think they've learned their lesson. Encanto is a success. Raya was not. Strange World is not necessarily on the same level as Encanto.
Strange World is on the same level as a rice cake.
I mean, like, listen, I love Strange World. I thought it was a great film. I think that more people are slowly finding it, and over the next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Strange World becomes one of the top 10 streamed films of 2023. I think that people will find it as time goes on. Encanto was in theaters in November, right? In November 2021, and it did not find success until January 2022. And that is mostly because of a socioeconomic thing and a lack of connection to a story that they weren't going to see in theaters until started to develop some approach to it. The songs definitely add to that. The cultural aspect adds to that. And so I think that we're going to start to see films that follow suit with Encanto. But I do think that there will be a sequel of some sorts. I'm not saying a film, but I do think, and again, I think that the reason, going back to your question 4, the reason why they end with magical powers is because, man, you want to see those magical powers again in a 6-minute short, right? You want to see Louisa and goats in a 6-episode short where they're having fun. You know, you want to see these beautiful magical flowers blooming around Isabella in a 6-minute short kind of thing.
Right.
And then when you look at when you go and you see an attraction, and I think that's one of the things that they are trying to also do in the same way that I know that James Gunn announced this the other day, right, with DC, that everything is going to be fluid moving forward, animation, video games, whatever with DC. And I think that Disney is not, they're very aware of that. They're not trying to scam kids anymore. I think kids have grown smarter because of the internet or whatever. If they ended the film with no magical powers and then they went to a Disney attraction and all of those characters all of a sudden still had magical powers, kids might question that. They'd be like, but they stopped having those powers. So I think that ending the film with the powers, they are more easily able to buy into the powers on an attraction or whatever going forward.
That's brilliant. I think you're right, Josh.
Wow, definitely.
Absolutely.
You got to get that money. Okay, so George, what do you think? What do you want to see from Encanto?
Well, I don't necessarily feel like there's going to be a sequel, nor do I feel like there's a necessity. Do I feel like they're going to incorporate the characters in some sort of format, especially showcasing it on Disney Plus? Absolutely. Just as Josh had mentioned, probably maybe a series or a series of shorts or what have you. So this isn't the last that we've seen of Mirabelle and the family and what have you. But I'm with OG. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to animated films. I'm like a one and done sort of thing. Even if they were to make a series or a series of clips, I may watch them, but I wouldn't be into it as much as I am with the original film. When it comes to incorporating Encanto in the parks, I think we already are starting to see a presence of Encanto in there with meet and greets with Mirabelle, which I think are phenomenal. I watched some of the videos that people post online and just her interaction with the kids and the people. And I think a lot of the meet and greets, I think, would be strongly pointed for Encanto, because everything that we've just discussed about this on this whole topic is how relatable are those characters to the fans. So when the fans enter their world, you get on their level, they get to know you, and it has that harmony, it has that mesh well. As far as an attraction goes, there were talks of Josh D'Amaro's epic What If presentation at the expo, where it incorporated Encanto in the Magic Kingdom, which I think would be quite interesting if it was to end up in Magic Kingdom. I agree with OG. I think it would go nicely in Disney California Adventure due to the cultural impact of what DCA holds, especially with the Latin, the Hispanic culture. As far as Walt Disney World goes, I would actually like to see it incorporated more into Epcot, because Epcot has more of that traditionalizing of world culture, and to be able to bring Encanto into new light, not even just from the animated film, but just from Latin American and Hispanic backgrounds, just as a whole, as a culture. I think that would do well in Epcot. And as Walt would say it, to plus it, I didn't even think of it until OG played that video. If they was to make a Mystic Manor version of Encanto, that would be completely badass. That would be an e-ticket without being an e-ticket.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So couple thoughts on it. First of all, I love these ideas. I think these ideas are fantastic. The one thing I would say is that I think that if you do a sequel, so none of us are saying that they should do a sequel, because all of us are basically saying don't do a sequel. Josh said you could do other kinds of things without having to do a sequel. Here's why I think you can't do a sequel. And Disney, by the way, does not have a great track record of sequels that perform. I mean, yes, you can make an argument that Frozen 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Frozen 2, yes, right? You've got
Rescuers Down Under.
Rescuers
was,
Down
I think,
Under.
better than the original.
Okay.
I would
agree.
also state that Frozen 2 makes the original Frozen better.
Interesting.
That's
I'd have to
true.
think about that.
It adds to the mythology, right? Is that what you're getting at, George? Yeah. I mean, Josh.
Yeah.
And then the other one that's the best of all time is Toy Story, because it has 4 full films, right? But in the whole catalog of Disney films, we just came up with like a handful that performed well. Here's why you can't do a sequel to Encanto, because are you going to bring Lin-Manuel Miranda back? Because if you don't, you basically just did Lion King 2, or you basically just did. I mean, you didn't nail it. If you don't bring Lin-Manuel Miranda back, you don't get it. You don't get an Encanto 2 that people are going to love. So I would not go in that direction at all. I think that's a bad call to go in that direction. I think there is pressure on Disney, which is why they did end the film. I think that's just very well said, artfully said, Josh. They ended the film the way that they did, so you can go experience them with their powers. And I think that there's this interesting pressure on studios right now to create franchises out of everything. Everything has to be a franchise. That's not really the way that Walt did it, because what Walt did said is you go watch on the screen, and then you come to the park and you get to go into the movie, right? You ride Snow White. It's not a new story. It's the same story you saw on the screen.
You're the character.
But you're the character, yeah. So I love the idea of doing a ride concept of Encanto, the film, where you are Mirabelle in Mystic Manor. Like, that to me would be awesome. I don't need to see let's put her in a new story. Like, I personally speaking, this is going to be really controversial because
I know where you're going with it. I know where you're going with it. So you might as well go with it.
I was trying to go balls to the walls, George. Yeah. So I really wish they would have just given us a Tiana, Princess and the Frog from the movie, because the movie's amazing. It's one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. And the fact that we had to see something on top of that bums me out a little bit. I wanted to see those songs. Those songs are fantastic. I wanted to see her and her entrepreneurial journey. We get to the end and she's opened up the restaurant. You get to like go through it, and maybe you can even eat in the restaurant the way that you can with Blue Bayou. I mean, how cool would that be? Yeah. So I think that my point is that I wish that Disney and all the other studios would feel less pressure to create franchises. I get it. Josh is right. They're doing it for a monetary reason, because they make money. Doesn't matter if it's high quality or low quality, people will show up for it. So don't want a sequel, realize where they're at. Love the ride concept. Mystic Manor is phenomenal. Did any of you guys watch the Hollywood Bowl show?
I did.
Yes.
And the reason why I watched it is because a girl that I went to high school with choreographed it. So hi, Corinne.
Cool. That's awesome. It was phenomenal. It was a super impressive show. Obviously, they got the cast to come back and do it, which is, but if they could do a show like that, the way that they do the Frozen show right now, if they could do a show like that, I think that would be huge for Disney. It would be a big attractor. A lot of people would show up for it. You get to hear the songs. You get to see. I mean, the set that they were playing with at the Hollywood Bowl was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen a set that was that impressive. So for me, that's where I would go with it. I would not do a sequel. They probably will. I just think it's not going to be a good one, and I wish they would do a little bit more with bringing us back into that story as opposed to needing to create new ones.
Now, I have a question for you, fellas. That's kind of connected to this. Thinking in Disney's mentality, do you think that they would do an Encanto sequel because of how it didn't get that chance of how they expected it to in theaters? So in Disney's mind, to kind of have a redemption film to really see how it would go as a franchise by having a sequel, could they have that as a mentality to say, you know what, that is the main driven force why we could have a sequel for Encanto?
That's an interesting question, George, and Josh touched upon this, where the socioeconomic situation is different with family films. They're just not doing what they used to do, except for Minions, which I do not understand that at all.
Frat Bros showed out for Minions, dude.
They showed up for Minions, and that's about it, right?
19-year-olds love Minions,
right? So it's like it's a huge risk for Disney to put the first one didn't do well in theaters, to put this one out there again, considering the landscape. right now with family animated films in theaters. I mean, yes, there are exceptions like, Minions and what have you, but most of them aren't really doing that great. So I don't think they will. But what do you guys think?
I'm kind of on the same. I'm on the same plane. I don't think. Actually, looking at the slate from Disney, I don't think that they have any sequels on like coming forward. I think that again, if they plan to do something with Encanto, I don't see it becoming a full film. I see it as a series or a series of shorts. I obviously do think that it works as a Broadway musical, which is again a thing they can monetize. They've already announced this past week that Coco is going to become a musical. They are the Disney. I forget the name of the actual branch of it, but the Disney Broadway musical branch is one of the most profitable branches that they have, because every one of those shows that they've put out has been banger after banger, because people and they inherently created the model for the modern Broadway musical, right? Like all of a sudden we saw Mean Girls and Legally Blonde and Beetlejuice like up on Broadway because Lion King did so well, because Beauty and the Beast did so well. And so we're going to, I think, see that as a continuation. And I think that in a way, like, you can't do a sequel story on Broadway. That seems silly. You would use the same songs, the same characters, the same story. I think that will definitely happen with Encanto in due time. Obviously, within the parks, you can do a very similar thing. There are various venues across all the parks that exist. You don't even have to build a brand new building, right? There's an empty building at California Adventure. There's several empty buildings at Walt Disney World that all suit a musical kind of Broadway style theater. So that'll happen. And I think that those things will happen. I'm not worried about them bastardizing a ton of sequels out there at us for no reason. I think that Disney has actually done well, even maybe not, Rescuers Down Under didn't economically do well, but I think they found a story that was a good follow-up to The Rescuers.
Oh, yeah.
I think that Frozen 2 does make the original Frozen a better story. Outside of that, like, I think the one bad one they've done is the Winnie the Pooh follow-up film that no one saw and no one cares about. So who cares? We don't even talk about it.
I'm hearkening back when I think of Disney sequels. I harken back to more of like the VHS releases.
Sure, the VHS
yeah,
releases.
because those were
we're now in a streaming situation, right? Like we're past.
Well,
I think that we're just in a different era of time.
We are, and I think, and I think that there's So one of the things that I'm always like bummed out about is that Disney isn't doing more 2D animation, because I think 2D animation is so cool. But here's the
Tangled
thing:
series was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we had a friend that worked on the Tangled series. Yeah. But
Big Hero 6, excellent 2D series.
Ooh, I haven't seen that. I need to see that.
It's great.
The problem is that 3D animation has made something that's given us a different, like you're saying, Josh, we're in a different marketplace, because now instead of having people hand draw every single 2D animated thing again, I can take characters that I've already designed, that are already modeled, and I can just use them again. Right now, granted, I have to animate them again, so there is a lot of work involved, but we're not talking about the same kind of production costs that that are for an original film. So I think
what was interesting though, and I just want to bring this up. What was an interesting moment? I think December, November last year, and it was a 2-minute short, maybe if that. But there was a lot of hoopla socially online, which I think is something that Disney does measure now. There was a lot of hoopla around that Studio Ghibli Star Wars crossover with Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
And there's something to that, right? And I think that Disney does see that. They saw the success with Tangled. They saw the success with some of the other 2D things that they've done.
Star Wars Visions is another example.
Star Wars Visions was huge. People loved it. Yeah. The What If series, even though it's not traditionally hand drawn, it is 2-dimensional, right? It is great. Jay, you and I have absolutely been above and beyond in love with Gravity Falls, which is a show
it's the
that
best show.
like
I'm rewatching it right now, dude. That's how
it's so
good it is.
it's so good. And so I think that they know that there is a love of that kind of thing, and I think that there is a place for it. I don't think it's in theaters because, like I said before, I don't think anything is really working in theaters. But I think that there is a format for it. I think that socially, they saw that Studio Ghibli, Baby Yoda Grogu short and went, "This is interesting." And I think collaborating with other studios is maybe the future on that, especially like the Tangled one was not made by Disney. It was made by a Canadian company. A friend of ours works for that Canadian company. All of the new Paul Rudish Mickey shorts are made by that same Canadian company. Wow. So 2D animation maybe isn't happening at Disney, but it's happening for Disney. And I think that that is something that they're looking to outsource to bring into the studio. And if somebody pitches, hey, I think a great Encanto 2D animated series could work, Disney might greenlight it because they'll say, I think people love Encanto. People are interested in 2D animation. Let's run 8 episodes and see how it works on Disney Plus. There's no harm, no foul, really, when it comes to streaming.
Yeah,
true.
And let's not pretend that we're not that far off from them being able to do 2D animated series based on AI generated content.
Yikes.
Because we're all thinking about like, oh, there's some photos online. Isn't that fun? All you have to do is is if Disney takes that base of code and says, we want to turn it into something that will actually create sequences, they're not that far away. And their artistry could make that amazing, right? So all they got to do is have the right inputs into the computer to tell it what to do. So we may see a resurgence of it too. Who knows where we're gonna go? It is a brave new world out there. Well, I think anything else you guys want to talk about with Encanto? I think we all agree that, I mean, I would give it so let's just do this. We'll end the show with, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10? And I'll start with an 8.5. So anybody who thought that I was hating on the ending or anything like that, I'm just telling you I was struggling with it. I actually really like this film, and I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. OG, what would you give it?
I'm going to give it an 8, a solid 8. I also want to add one thing about Lin-Manuel. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw the Mary Poppins sequel, but the music in that was also incredible. I loved it. Now he had a really tough job with that movie. The music from the first film is like legendary, big shoes to fill. But I think he did a really, really good job with that film. I still listen to some of those songs today. So check it out if you haven't. It's awesome.
Yours is an 8 out of 10. By the way, I heard my only complaint I heard about that film was his performance in the film, not the songs.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, the songs were great. They were really great.
I was
check it out. I think you'll like it. It's really classic Disney. It has that old school kind of feel to it. It's really good stuff.
Good.
That's awesome. So 8.5, 8. Josh Taylor.
I'm gonna go with 9. I'm a letterboxed person, so everything's like 1 out of 5 there. I'm pretty sure if I didn't rate Encanto already, I think I set it at 4.5, so that would equal 9 out of 10. I don't think that there's a lot that's missing from that film, to be honest. I think that there's a lot of great on the surface storytelling. I think there's a great amount of subtext. I think that the colors are fantastic, the character designs, the actual animation.
Dude, Mirabelle's hair alone could win an Oscar. You know what I mean?
So I mean, like the costuming, everything that they decided to choose and whatnot. And there's hardly ever a moment in that film where I'm like, oh, this is the moment where I walk away and go to the bathroom and come back. It is a movie that frame one from the last frame is progressing the story forward. And I think it's a fantastic film, probably one of the best of the last decade from Disney.
I agree. I think it's phenomenal from Disney. Yeah, that's great. George, what do you got? You're batting cleanup here.
I was struggling between an 8 and a 9, so I'll just meet it in the middle. I'll be with you, Jay, 8.5. It's a very strong film. I don't think really there's a handful of films in cinema history that have hit a straight 10 for me. I mean, that's an incredible feat to accomplish. But I mean, for an animated film produced by Disney, I think an 8.5 is a really telling tale that this story can stand alone and withhold integrity. You know, that it has that classic Disney style animation, even though it's in modern day CGI animation. But I do have to also add to the character of Mirabelle herself. And I'm going to try to say this as respectful and as possible. There are many female heroine characters throughout Disney that have the slender body, the long legs, the beautiful face. And what I love what Disney did with Encanto is they took that stereotype Disney princess heroine look, threw it out, and said, you know what, we want to make Mirabelle a true real life being, that you don't have to be a model looking person to be a strong female heroine character. You know, they gave her, you know, glasses, kind of like those chubby chipmunk cheeks and everything.
Yeah.
But that's what makes Mirabelle Mirabelle. And I don't say that as a negative way. I actually say that as a positive way, that I love how Disney stepped out of its normal comfort zone and gave her, even though she's an animated character, a more realistic tone that anybody can be a hero. Anybody can be a princess. Anybody can be a protagonist. No matter how you are on the outside does not dictate of how you are on the inside.
And George, that's a great point. And what I love about that character is the way she looks. She's kind of got that nerdy kind of style, and I think it's great. It's something different. It's something unique. It's not, like you said, the typical kind of Disney princess sort of style. She has a lot of character, and like I said earlier on the show, the curly hair and those green glasses, and you would know exactly who that is. It's iconic at this point. Absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
One of the things you guys made me think about as we were talking about doing the ratings and stuff too is notice what's valuable to streaming, because it's a little bit different. I would give a 10 out of 10 for Disney animation to Beauty and the Beast.
Well, I was just going to say, you just took my words right out of my mouth. 10 out
Yeah.
of 10 for Beauty and the Beast. Nothing can ever really touch it at this point.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. But here's the thing. Encanto beat Beauty and the Beast in terms of time on channel. When people were on Disney Plus, their eyes were on Encanto. And this is a really interesting thing to think about in terms of, you know, Disney's in this place where it's like, well, what's Disney Plus going to do? Their streaming service isn't making a bunch of money, blah, 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 blah. Disney is going to aim for more of these kind of films. And by the way, the reason I brought that up as an example is because I'm more likely to rewatch Encanto than I am Beauty and the Beast right now. Why? Because yes, it's newer, right? And I've seen it fewer times, but it's also one of those things where I don't have to pay a lot of attention to it. I can have it on kind of in the background. And does Beauty and the Beast have great songs? Yes, but they're almost operatic in the way that they do their songs. Whereas opposed to this one, it's just kind of more, it's like makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm in a good mood, so I'll have it on in the background. And that I think is going to be a really interesting thing to see, because yes, Turning Red did pretty well as well from a streaming service platform. I mean, it was one of the top 15, I believe. Probably was a top 10. But I'm almost wondering if Disney will try to say like, hey, look, we don't need to put the gas pedal down on these stories that have like deeper meaning towards like old fairy tales that we've told each other. Not that Encanto doesn't have that, because it's based in Colombian culture. So I'm not trying to say it doesn't have that, but it is a little bit more of a lighthearted view of it as opposed to a Beauty and the Beast is a pretty intense, right? Like, so I think that I wonder how that will work with streaming in the future, where Disney says, actually throw Lin-Manuel Miranda on 3 more of these things, because if it's playing in the background, people are just going to be really happy. You know what I mean? I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see. There's so much we could talk about with it being the #1 streamed movie.
There's so much that we could talk about, but we cannot talk about Bruno.
Exactly right. We will stop when we get to Bruno. Any last thoughts about Encanto as a film?
I think, like, to your credit, Jay, which I hate to do. So when you look at Howard Ashman's songs, he came from a musical theater operatic style background, right? Lin-Manuel is writing songs that are still musical theater, but they are much more relevant to pop music. They're much more relevant to a larger demographic. And I think that's what we're going to see going forward, not only in music, but also in storytelling, is what is relevant to current times. I hate to say this because I am somebody who loves records. I'm a history nerd, right? But like, when you think about what's going to succeed now and even in the long term, it's things that are almost 10 years ago, they would be throwaway things. But like now it seems like we're writing for modern audiences and hoping that they last. But we need to find that sweet spot where Encanto does, in that it not only succeeds at finding a modern audience with its themes, with its music, with how it is colorful and cultural and everything like that, but it also succeeds in finding an older audience. Again, it has that subtext to it. It also has classic themes to it that feel like they're evoking classic Disney. I think that that's where films like Strange World or even like Lightyear fail, in that they don't feel like Pixar films. They don't feel like Disney films. There's not that classic feeling to them, but they are still modern and new. So there needs to be that combo of both that really makes it magical. Moana does the same thing, right? Moana, again, from Lin-Manuel writing all the songs, it feels new and culturally relevant, but it also still has timeless classic storytelling that goes along with it. And so I think that we'll find those as we go along with different films. And of course, not every film is going to be a major hit. You know, for every Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, you're going to have a Chicken Little from time to time.
Exactly.
You know, so that's fine. But Encanto works because I think it marries both old and new ideas together, which is really what people are looking for these days. And Lin-Manuel Miranda, as a songwriter, I think does really well in marrying the old, which is the classic operatic musical theater idea, with the new, which is pop music.
If we've learned anything in 2022, it's don't bet against James Cameron.
Yeah,
Don't bet against Lin-Manuel Miranda. Those two know how to make people happy. Well, we would love to know what you all listening think of Encanto as well. So let's hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, I'm going to go reverse order this time. So, George, I'm going to start with you. Tell the people where they can find you and where they can message you and go balls to the wall on Twitter if they need to.
Absolutely. Again, I'm George, the Disney Family Man. You could check my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. You could check out the new podcast I'm part of, A Walk with Walt. And of course, you can find me on my home base, Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And then from all this great discussion with you fellas, I think after this, I'm going to go watch Encanto.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yes.
And by the way, George, I've never asked you this question before, and I feel bad not having checked it out. But what is your YouTube channel? Your Disney Family Man YouTube channel? What's that about? What do you do on there?
So with Disney Family Man 23, it's kind of having an identity crisis right now because of how it originally started is now what I'm doing with Citrus Corner. So it's basically my concept of Disney Family Man going to Citrus Corner, but eventually it's going to evolve into more of family vlogs is what that's going to eventually become.
Cool. Awesome. So tune into that too. And then, despite our cantankerous nature on podcasts and live streams, one of my favorite humans on the planet, Josh Taylor, Modern Mouse. What are you up to, and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram are kind of my main socials. At Modern Mouse Josh, and then Modern Mouse on YouTube, which every 2 weeks or so I put out a video. Hopefully every 2 weeks. Sometimes stuff comes up where I usually analyze and talk about something under the Disney umbrella. I've done in recent times. I did a video about Pixar and their ideas around parenting. I did a whole video about the history of Pinocchio dating back to the original novel and talking about why nobody understands the story of Pinocchio and how to adapt it properly. And then I'm talking about coming up soon, Rizzo the Rat, and why you're not seeing him as often anymore in Muppet media, and how he came to be and how he has kind of fallen from grace.
I love Rizzo. By the way, do you want to promo? I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to do this. But do you want to promo your special interview you're doing in your next video?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did tell you about that. Yeah. So one of the things for my videos is that it's not just me sitting in front of the camera explaining things. That's kind of how the videos used to be. But I'm trying to add a bunch of small skits and ideas to the videos. My friend Joe, who co-writes all my videos with me, him and I have kind of writers' rooms meetings in the middle of my videos where we talk about the subject, or we kind of go off on different tangents about different things. There's also a whole joke going on where YouTube is calling me, telling me what to do. It also might be Lindsay Lohan. There's a whole joke about that. And then for this video coming up, I actually have a friend of mine who is a puppeteer and has worked with the Muppets, and he has his own puppet. And so he is going to be that puppet. His name is Barry. Barry is going to be a part of this video. He's going to get interviewed in his relationship with Rizzo.
That is awesome.
That's great.
Josh, that was the long way of saying Josh is interviewing a Muppet on his next video.
I'm interviewing. I can't say that because that would we might get sued.
I know what you mean.
A potential Muppet who never got the job.
That's right. Great.
I love it.
It's great.
Go check out Josh's channel at Modern Mouse. All right, OG, how do people find you? Where are you at?
You can find me right here on Orange Grow 55 on YouTube. Also, we're on Rumble, where we do have some exclusives over there. Sometimes YouTube doesn't like certain topics, so we go over there and talk about stuff that's a little bit more controversial.
That's where we really go balls to the wall.
Right, exactly. And you can find me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55 if you want to interact with me on there. Would love to hear from you. Constantly talking shop, whether it be movies, TV, a lot of theme park stuff. And also, Josh, I just want to say it was great having you on. I know you've been on Story Geeks many times, but first time here on OG55, it was really great having you on. And if you ever get the itch to talk some theme parks, man, you're always welcome to join in. I would love to have you back on again.
Perfect.
And
as long as Jay's not here.
Yeah. Or we just do a Royal Rumble and it's just you versus me and we just go at it.
That's not how Royal Rumbles work, but that's okay. That's a wrestling podcast. It's a different idea.
We'll do that too. You can find me over on Twitter at Jay Shear. And then I also have a channel called How Stories Work with Jay Shear, where it's a little bit more for those people who are really invested in storytelling, or like screenwriters or directors or anybody like that who really wants to break down film and really get into the deeper elements that are found in film. I'm doing a whole series on the movie Chinatown, which is not only one of the best movies of all time, but I read the script probably 4 or 5 times to create this video, and it is the best script that I've ever read. It is a phenomenal script. So highly recommend Chinatown. Not necessarily for kids, but turn Encanto on in one room, and then you can watch Chinatown.
I mean, are they into local politics? Because maybe.
Yeah, maybe if they really want to know the inner workings of the DWP in Los Angeles in 1934.
That's great.
Yes. So guys, this was a fantastic, really fun time. Appreciate you hanging out with me and talking about Encanto. And if anybody wants to make future recommendations, just do so down in the comments down below. If you want us to dig deeper into a film like we did with Encanto today, we would be happy to do another one of these. So
Could I add one more thing before we go?
Please.
Jay?
Please.
One more thing. I just want to thank you, Jay. Today was a fantastic conversation. Had a lot of fun. And it's great having you officially on the team, brother.
Oh, it's good. It's good to be a part of the team. And probably it'll be a little bit of time before we record another one of these, unless the guys want to do one without me, which is totally cool. Because I'm going to be actually traveling out to California and going to Disneyland. So
there you go.
There it is.
Will you be visiting the Modern Mouse studio?
Oh yeah, I'll come by the Modern Mouse studio. You can interview me. I'll be a Muppet. Muppet. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show.